to today's lesson. So for everyone, today is the beginning of a new module. And this new module is predominantly around something called quadratic equations. But before we can get to quadratic equations and solving them, we need to check a couple of basics. So what I want to show you quickly is something called multiplying out or expanding. And then I want to check that you are comfortable doing it. So what I have here is I have one bracket, x plus 2, and it's being multiplied by this other bracket, x minus 3. And one of the skills we need to make sure we have is we know how to expand this by multiplying out. And the way it works is you go the first term times the first, which will give you x squared. Then the first times the second. Actually, you could do this in another order, but this is the order I normally do it. Then the second times the first, so that's plus 2x. And then 2 times minus 3 is minus 6. Now, when you expand these are called two binomials. When you multiply out two brackets, what you notice is sometimes you get something called like terms. And if there are like terms, what we do is we add or subtract them. So this expression will become, so minus 3x plus 2x is just going to leave me with minus x minus 6. And so we've multiplied out these two binomials, and what we get left with is something called a trinomial, because it has 3 terms. So that is the first skill I want to practice. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you feel like you are sort of familiar with this. Give me a thumbs down if you're like, oh man, you're talking another language. I want to just get a feel for my classroom. Okay, fantastic. Then what I would like you to do is I would like everyone to try and do B. To try and do B, I want you to multiply that out and get me a expression from multiplying out those two binomials. And by binomials, we just mean things that have 2 terms. Off we go. And then once you feel like you're finished with it, you can put your answer in the chat. And for those who are feeling awesome, let's do this one. Let's go. I'm going to put one more here so that we can let's have one where we go a minus 7 and a minus 4. So I've added one more practice one just to check. So those who are finished, you can try that. Okay, so I see lots of good answers coming through in the chat. Blessing and Kokela and Nati, Amokalani, things are looking good. And so let's just make sure everyone does the C, which is the third example. And if I see good stuff there, then I'm going to move on. So the first bit is a squared. What's the rest going to be? Pop your answer in the chat. This is an important skill. So I see a little bit of variation in the chat, and you know why. I was sneaky. I put in what's called a double negative, and that's why I added this one. So see if you can work out what the double negative does. Did you see my sneakiness there, Lebo?
Yes, I did, Mr. S. Don't
I was
get
like,
caught out, guys.
everyone's rocking this. Let's
We have
switch
a
it up.
hand from Umta, Mr. S. Are you able to see the question?
Totally. Go ahead, Umta.
Hi, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm getting you, sir.
Very good. What can I do for you?
Oh, no, I was just answering your question about the double negatives, sir.
Okay, tell me about the double negative. What did you know about the double negatives?
If you have a negative, right, on the first bracket, and then you also have a negative on the second bracket, when you cross, like when you multiply the negative with the negative, it's going to give you a positive, right?
Yep, that's exactly it.
It's going to be, yeah, because we did this last year, sir. So
Aha, this is good. But remember, just because you did it last year doesn't mean you still remember it. So but it's very good. Thank you. So the thing I want to point out here is that negative times a negative ends up giving you a positive. And so you should end up with a squared minus 11a plus 28. And you'll notice that these middle terms, the minus 4a, and then the minus 7a, they give you minus 11a because you're taking away 4 and then you're taking away 7. So you've taken away 11. So these are all quadratic expressions. Can anybody tell me why all three of these expressions are quadratic expressions? And in fact, they're quadratic trinomials. Who would like to raise their hand and let me know why these are not linear expressions or something different? I'd love to hear from the class. Let's unmute Oriconisa. I think it is.
Hi,
Hello.
sir.
Hey.
I would like to try. It's not a linear equation because there is no equal sign. There's no anything on the left. Like it goes to 0 or it goes to another number. That's why it's a.
So this is not an
quadratic
equation. It's an expression because it only has one side. Why do you think we call it a quadratic? Why are all three of these called quadratic expressions? I think we might have lost some people there. And the thing I was looking for is all of these expressions have a highest power of 2. So you'll notice there's a power of 2 in all of these expressions. There's variables to the power of 2. And because that is like that, we call it a quadratic expression. And because it's got 3 terms, it's a quadratic trinomial expression. The words aren't too important, but I mean, it's good to keep your vocabulary growing. Okay, let's move on to the second part of the lesson then. Oh, before I run away here. The second part of the lesson is I want you now factorize a trinomial. So instead of telling you to multiply out, actually, let me give you a chance to take a screenshot if you need to. If you want to take a screenshot, take it now. And then I'm going to move on to the next part. Okay. Cool. So another important skill for doing quadratic equations is factorizing. So there's different ways of factorizing, so I don't mind which method you use. I have my particular method, but you're free to do whatever method works for you. If we had to try and factorize this first trinomial, what I do is I draw like a cross like this, and then I draw a line, and I look at the number in front of the middle term, which in this case is -1. So there's a little -1 there. And then I also look at that first term, and I ask myself, what multiplied by what gives me 1? Fortunately, 1 is a very simple number, so I put a 1 and a 1 here. And then I look at 30, which is the last number, the constant term. And I asked myself, what does 30, what are the factors of 30? And from what I can think of, we're going to get 30 could be broken down into 5 and 6 or 10 and 3. What are the other factors? 15 and 2. And just as a quick vote, which factors do you think I should choose to solve my trinomial? Put it in the chat. Which factors do you think I should choose? I've got a choice now. And some of you might have seen this method before. Which factors should I choose? Yeah. And I think a lot of you know that I need to somehow get to -1. And the way to get to -1 is to choose the factors that are quite close together, which are these ones. So I'm going to put a 5 here and a 6 here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply along here, but I need to put plus and minus signs. So because I want to end up with a negative, I'm going to make this a plus and this a minus. I go 1 times -6 is -6. 1 times +5 is +5. And then 5 plus -6 is -1. Then to finish off, to write my factorization out, I'm going to write it like this. I write it as x plus 5 and x minus 6. And so that is a factorized trinomial expression. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to try by yourself to do this one over here. However, if you have a question, now is a good time to ask your question. But for the rest of us, if you could try and factorize that trinomial for me.
Mr. Ayers, we have a question from Umta.
Okay, Umta, go ahead.
Hi, sir.
Hey.
Honestly, I don't understand this.
Okay, do you have another method you use?
No, sir, I never understand this. I never understood this even last year. I only understood the multiplying out part, not the factorizing.
Okay. So can I suggest, I'm going to talk you through these examples now. For the first part, I want you to break it into these steps. So if you look at this one in green, there is 3 important numbers. The number in front of the x squared, sometimes we call it a, is 1. The number in front of the x is +9. And the number at the end, sometimes we call it c, is 20. Are you okay with that?
Yes, sir.
So now what I do is, this is my method, but there are other ways. I draw across, and I do sometimes just write that middle number first, but you don't have to. You can actually just start on the left-hand side, and you ask yourself, if you look at A, what 2 numbers do I multiply together to get 1? What do you think, Umta? What's those numbers going to be?
1 times 1, sir.
You are winning at life. Okay, now, since we dealt with A, let's deal with B. B is the number +9, and we just write it at the bottom here. Okay, now, if we look at the last one, C, if you talk about 20, what factors of 20 are there? Tell me some of the factors of 20. What 2 numbers multiply together to give you 20?
4 times 5, sir.
Perfect.
10 times 2.
10 times 2? Yeah, perfect. No, that's fine. Of these 2 pairs of factors, which one do you think we're going to use?
The first one, sir.
Yep. So what am I going to do with them? I'm going to write 4 and I'm going to write 5 on this side. Okay. Now the next step, so we've dealt with these parts. The next step is to decide if the signs in front of the numbers are going to be positive or negative. Now, since we need to get to +9, I'm going to put a plus here. What am I going to put at the next space? Is it going to be a plus or a minus? So it's not going to be a negative because I need to get to 9. And if you look at what I've got so far, I've only got +4. So in order to get to 9, this is going to have to be a plus as well. So what we do is we multiply along the cross. We go 1 times 4 is +4. and 1 times plus 5 is plus 5. And so 4 plus 5 is 9. Then the last step is to read off the answer horizontally. And the way we do that is we attach the variable to the 1 on the side. So the variable in this case was x. So we go x plus 4, or you even say 1x plus 4. And then we say 1x plus 5. And we're just reading them off this way. And that would be the correct answer.
Okay.
Okay, let's try one more. So everyone as a group, let's try and do D, and then we're going to move on. But let's just make sure we can do that. I like what I'm seeing in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. X plus 5, x plus 4, you are on it there. Akwande, I think so too. Look, everybody has different math teachers, and sometimes they do it in different ways, but and that's fine as long as you consistently are getting the right answer. You should get the same answer. Okay, now remember, we're not solving an equation here. Hey, we're actually factorizing. So we're just getting the answer for A was this one. The answer for B was this one. And we're trying to do C right now. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to look at my numbers. My numbers are 1, -7, and 6. And this is 1 and 1. And this is -7. And now I've got a choice. I've got to deal with the 6. I think, is it going to be 6 and 1 or 3 and 2? Well, 3 and 2 is not going to get me to 7. So I'm pretty certain that this is 6 and 1. And now I need to ask myself, basically the last step is is it going to be plus or minus or both minus? And here, the way to get, we actually, when we add up, we multiply along here. So we get 1 times -1 is -1. 1 times -6 is -6. And if we add those two together, we get -7. So be careful here. Ask yourself, does this one plus this one give you that one at the bottom? It does. So both of these need to be negative. If both the signs aren't negative, you're not going to get the right answer. So when we read these off, we attach an x to this side and we attach an x to this side. So we get x -6 times x -1. And if you want to see if you're correct, all you need to do is do what we did at the beginning of the lesson where you multiply out, and you can check that your answer was correct. And you'll notice that the double, the negative, is not a problem because -6 times -1 gives me +6. Okay. How are we all feeling? I think that got a bit harder. So let's just do one more like this. So I've just done, actually I did D, not C. I did D. I would like everyone to try and do C as well, because I feel like this is good practice. Does it matter which binomial you put first? DeCarlo, it doesn't, because multiplication is, the order doesn't matter with multiplication. So you could have written this like that. It's a great question. Thank you, DeCarlo. That was a really good question. Okay, so now we're trying to do C. I'm looking at my first term, there's a 1, and I just write that. Then the middle term is plus 13. And now I've got a choice with 42. So it's a bit harder. I could do 21 and 2. I could do 4 No, I can't do 4. I could do 6 and 7. 6 and 7. So 6 and 7 can multiply together to give you 42. So then I'm going to choose 6 and 7 because that gets me close to 13. So I go 6, 7. And now it's a question of, do I want pluses or do I want minuses? Well, 1 times plus 6 gives me plus 6. 1 times plus 7 gives me plus 7. And the good news is this plus this gives me this. And the final answer will then be x plus 6, x plus 7. And so this is factorizing a quadratic expression. Cool. Give us a thumbs up if you're feeling good.
Everyone.
Give us a thumbs down if you're feeling a bit lost. I think I'm going to move on to a slightly harder trinomial now, if everyone's okay with that. Okay, take a
Mr. S?
screenshot. Yeah, question?
No, they put their hand down.
Okay. All right, let's move on. So now something is a little bit different. I want us to try and factorize this expression. But before we do it, I want someone to come online and tell us what they notice is different, and then also tell us how our method might need to change to factorize this type of trinomial. Who would like to give us some information? Kokela, what do you think? Have you got some tips for us?
Hi, sir.
Okay.
I think it's because there is a whole number next to the X.
Okay, so this is what's different. It's not 1 anymore. I think you're right. What do you think we need to do?
I think we need to write a 3 instead of a 1. I'm not quite sure.
You are winning at life. Okay, here's what you do. You say to yourself, what 2 numbers multiply together to give you 3? What 2 numbers do you multiply together to give you 3? So it's just going to be 3 and 1.
1.
Because you know the number, that's how we get the 3 in front. Now, just like before, I'm going to do this first one with you, and then I'll give you a chance on the second one. We write down the -7, which is what we have at the bottom. Okay, now, so the only thing that changed was this first little bit over here, where instead of having 1 and 1, we have 3 and 1, because 3 times 1 gives me the 3. The -7 is the same, and now we have a choice. Kokela, what do you think for 6? What are the factors of 6?
1 and 6, 2
6.
and 3.
Yep, and that's it. So we just need to try and find a combo that works here. So what do you think would work? What should I try first? Should I try 1 and 6 or 2 and 3?
I think it's 1 and 6.
Okay, so if I put 1 here and 6 here, it feels like the number's going to get very big because 3 times 6 gets you 18. So it wasn't a bad try, but it doesn't quite work because 3 times 6 makes it very big. Let's try it the other way around. If I make it 6 and 1, 3 times 1, there's no way to get to 7. So it was a good first go, but I'm going to try a different set. I'm going to try 2 and 3. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Okay, now, if I want to get to -7, I'm going to go 3 times 3, and I'm going to make this negative so that I get closer to the -7. So 3 times -3 is -9. What do you think I'm going to put in front of the 2?
It's going to
plus
be
or minus?
positive.
Yeah, because 1 times +2 is +2. And then if you think of these two, what +2 minus 9 gives me my -7.
7.
So what is the final answer going to be if I write it out? The factorization. So I read it on the top, and I'm going to go 3x plus 2, and then it's going to be x minus 3. Thank you so much for your help, Kokela. I really appreciate you helping us out. I would love everyone to try and do h using that same method that I just used. Okay. And then after that, we're going to take a break. So can't we multiply the 3 with 6? It gives me the same answer. It doesn't get balanced, I don't think, Annie. I'm pretty sure it doesn't, because we have to get to the minus 7. 3 times minus 6 gives you... The important bit that's new here is notice how we're multiplying along the cross here. So 3 times minus 3 gives me minus 9. And so that's why I was doing that earlier on, because I was trying to make it kind of stick in your memory that we have to multiply along the lines, and then the two things that we get from multiplying have to add to the number below the line. Okay, so Pumlani, if we look at the steps that we go through, the first step is we always look at the numbers in front of each of these. So the numbers that are involved at the moment are going to be 2, minus 11, and 5. And I start by drawing the structure of a cross, because the cross represents the multiplication. There's 4 multiplications that happen. The one multiplication goes like this. The other multiplication goes like that. The other multiplication goes like that. And the other one goes like that. Now, I don't draw attention to that because it's built into the system. But let me show you. What do you think are going to be the numbers that are in the 2 blocks? If everyone could put in the chat, what do you think I'm going to put in the 2 blocks that are there? So Nawazi and 2 and 1. Yeah. So I get 2 and 1. Now I'm going to put something below this line, and it's going to be minus 11. Now I have a choice for these 2 blocks. What do you think I'm going to put in those blocks? In the chat. Well, the number is 5. And so we ask ourselves, well, what are the factors of 5? It's just 5 and 1. But now it's important I choose the right place to put my 5. If I put my 5 here, that's not going to be a good choice, because I'm only going to get to like 7 if I multiply along. So it's important I put the 5 on this side and the 1 over here. Now I have another choice to make. I want to get to minus 11. So in order to get lots of negatives, I need to put a negative here. So, and now I multiply along this cross. So 2 times minus 5 is minus 10. 1 times 1, well, what's this going to be? This is also going to be a minus. And so now you see these 2 together, they add to give you minus 11. So so what I'm going to suggest, if this is the first time you're seeing it, I would rewatch the video and then practice the skill until it becomes second nature. And don't worry, we're going to continue practicing this for a while. So what is the final answer? It is just going to be 2x minus 1, x minus 5, or you could have written it with the x minus 5 times 2x minus 1. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you have done fantastically well. I think that we are all due a break. And so what I want you to do is make sure that your cameras are on, and I want you to stand up with me. Okay, and then I'll come to questions after the break. So stand up. We can only do so much maths in half an hour before our brain goes, please give me a break. And so what we are going to do is we're going to just loosen it up by shaking out our hands. So just shake out your hands. Be a bit silly. Life's too short to be too serious all the time. And just roll those shoulders.
Please join in, guys. We're in this together.
Trust me, it's an investment in your future.
Recharging those batteries.
By the future, I mean like in 5 minutes' time. Okay. So
the near future.
in the very near future. Let's stretch out the shoulders. Stretch them out. Oh,
Look at all those faces.
stretch it out. Oh, doesn't that feel good? And shake it out one more time. And then I want you to do this brain break midline crossing thing. So left hand to the right ear, and then the other hand to your nose. And what's going to happen is the hand that is on my ear is going to go to my nose. The hand that's on my nose is going to go to my opposite ear. See if you can do that.
Wait, what, Mr. S?
So you start, wait. So first hand on your nose, other hand on your ear. Now you're going to try and take this hand, get it to your nose, and this is going to go to your other ear. So you did? It's
I
hard.
don't know if I'm doing it right.
Okay, so just keep practicing. We'll do this again. We'll do this again in the next lesson. So that's called a midline crossing, and it forces your brain to think with both hemispheres. And so sometimes when it's tired, it's like, no, we mustn't do things like that.
I might be tired. I might have had a long Monday.
Yeah. But it's good for breaking you out of kind of the pattern there. All right, another little puzzle. See if you can tell me what 3 angry birds gives you. What do 3 angry birds give you? So the first angry bird is definitely going to give you 4. There's no debating that. Second one is a little bit harder. What are our choices? Something. What divided by what? So what? Let's try. What do we have? 6 and 2. No, 12 and 2. No. What divided by what gives you 3? So we could have 9 and 3. Does that work? So what divided by what gives you 3? You could have 9 and 3, or you could have 12 and 4. So I was thinking, if this is 9 plus, so if this is 9 and this is 3, are we okay? 9 plus 4 is 13. 13 minus 3 is 10. So that's good. And this is that. Yes. So what is my final answer going to be?
Now is the time to change your answer if you would like to.
This is actually quite a hard one. Hey, don't you think? This is a bit of a harder one.
Yes. Yeah, it was tricky.
Yeah, like, because you had to sort of play with the combination. You had to say like what divided by what gives you 3, and then like there could be multiple numbers that give you that. So then what ones fit the top line? Yeah. So I would say 4 plus 9 is 13 plus 3. And the difficult step was getting the green, the light green and the red bird. And so the answer would be 16. It feels a bit like a trinomial though, the way we were getting combinations of numbers. You know, like we were trying to find.
Oh, I gotta try different options.
Okay, cool. Well done, everyone. Tell me in the chat, unhappy face if you didn't like that, happy face if you liked that. Even if it was a bit challenging, it was a bit harder. Let me know how you feel about that.
Be honest.
No judgments. Sometimes it's nice to be challenged a bit, even if it's a bit hard at first. Okay, let's keep rolling. I think it's time for some proper quadratic equations. So let's look at a quadratic equation. Notice how this is no longer a quadratic expression, but rather it's basically a quadratic equation because there are two sides. And I want to give you, actually, let's have a vote. Who thinks they know how to do this? Say yes in the chat if you think you know how to do this. Say no if you don't know how to solve this equation. I just want to check based on the spread of the class. Okay, so but it's about even. We're going to do this first one together. So in order to solve a quadratic equation, we need it to be in standard form where the one side is essentially 0 and the other side is all together. So in order to get it in standard form, the thing that is causing this to be non-standard is this minus 10. So I'm going to bring it across and I get x squared minus 7x plus 10 equals 0. This is called standard form. And the numbers in front of each of the terms are kind of called A, B, and C. So in this one, actually, I'll get to that later. Using the skills you learned earlier today, I want you to factorize that expression for me. So factorize just the expression part and put your answer in the chat.
Go ahead, guys.
Okay. If we factorize this expression, we go from this to these two brackets that are being multiplied together. And the other thing that's important about a quadratic equation is a quadratic equation has two answers. And the way we find the two answers is we say, well, what will make this factorized expression true? If x minus 5 equals 0, so that's focusing on this part over here. If x minus 5 equals 0, then 0 times anything is 0, which means the whole statement is then true and it's a solution. So that's the one part of the quadratic equation. It's this part over here. The other part is if x minus 2 is 0. So if x minus 2 is 0, then that's another solution to this equation. And then these are two simple equations, and we say that the answer is x is 5 or x is 2. So what are the steps that we follow to solve a quadratic like this? Step 1 was to get everything in standard form on one side. So that was this step. Step 2 was to factorize. And then step 3 was to take each of the brackets and make them equal to 0. Step 4 was to solve each of the equations that are left. And so that is how you solve a basic quadratic equation. Now, there are different variations of this, but that's the basic structure. Are there any questions from students in the class that you'd like me to go over? Otherwise, I'm going to give you another example. Okay. I don't see any questions. Take a screenshot if you need to. I'm going to move on. Come. So here is an example of other types. Oh, wait, let me find one more that's a bit more like. Okay, I'll tell you what, let's focus on these types. And let me just grab one that is suitable for what we're doing today. We're going to carry on with these other ones in the next lesson. But for now, I'm just trying to get my screenshot tool out here. The magic of screenshot tools. There it is. Let's make that disappear. Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to try and solve this quadratic equation for me using the same idea. So I'll even put the steps on the side here and you solve it. So step 1, is it in standard form? Step 2, factorize. Step 3, make equal 0. Step 4, solve each equation. Okay, so go ahead, try and do this by yourself, and then I will come along and assist you in a bit. And then if anybody wants to ask a question, then raise your hand and we can have a chat. Okay, Orikonisa, let's go to you. And then Atule will come to you after that. Hey.
Hi, sir.
Hey, what can I help you with?
I wanted to ask if is it a problem? I know it's 2x squared plus x minus 6. What if I put a bracket and put the 2 outside, then factorize what's inside? Like,
okay, so you're trying to take out like a common factor like this.
yes.
Okay, here's the thing. That only
No. You put out the 2 outside and then you solve what's inside the bracket.
Okay, you're thinking of something called completing the square, I think. We're not quite there yet. I would say the best way to do this isn't to complete the square. If it's a simple quadratic equation and you're just using factorization, you would just factorize it normally. There are other ways of doing it, but we're going to get to those in different lessons. Today's lesson is focusing on making sure you can factorize. And so all the equations I've chosen are kind of, you can factorize. Okay.
Okay.
But it's not it's possible to do it like you're saying. It's just that for today, I'm focusing on factorization as the skill that we really want to learn. Atule, let's go to you. No. Can you hear me? Atule?
Hello, sir.
Hey. What can I do for you?
I would like to ask, sir, if you let's say you put the 2x in the brackets, then you take the exponent out, you close the brackets and the exponent 2 out. Is it possible?
Okay, it is possible. What you're thinking about is something called solving a quadratic by completing the square. Now, it is possible, and in lesson 3, I'll talk to you about it, but it's not a good idea to use completing the square unless your teacher specifically, or the question says you must do this. So you always choose the easiest way to do something unless someone says you have to do it this way. And so what you're thinking about that. And so for now, what I want you to think of is, I want you to store a little bit of space in your memory for different ways of solving quadratics. Today's way of doing it is to say, is it in standard form? Then I'm going to factorize, then I make equal to 0, then I solve each equation. In future lessons, we're going to look at things like the formula and completing the square, but that will be a different set of steps that we organize in our brain. So for today, we're going to stick with one thing, just so that we don't get confused. So step 2, to factorize, I get 2x minus 3, x, perfect. 2x minus 3, x plus 2 equals 0. Let's just check this. Plus 4x minus 3x, that's good. Then I say this part is equal to 0, or x plus 2 is equal to 0. And then I solve each equation. So I get 2x equals 3, and x is 3 over 2. And on this side, we get x is minus 2. And those are my two answers for the quadratic equation. Some of you may have got caught out by some of those steps. And what I want to say is that in the next lesson, the whole of the next lesson is going to be around solving quadratic equations using this, this approach we've learned today. So if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, don't worry. We're coming, you'll see like the next lessons are going to be practicing this. All I want today is, are you okay with factorizing? Are you okay with applying this method for solving quadratic equations? And that's it. Okay, Tolofelo, what's your question?
Hi, sir.
Hey.
So I don't know, I got lost somewhere because my answer was 2x minus 2 and x plus 3. So where did I go wrong? And where does the fraction come from? I'm so confused.
Okay, don't worry. It's not uncommon. I know exactly why this is happening. If you look at my working, when I made my choice, is in your question, you always check this. 2 times plus 2 gives me plus 4. 1 times minus 3 gives me minus 3. Do you notice how minus 3 plus 4 gives me this thing? You have to
Yes.
check that you do get that number. Does your one work for that or not? Or is that where you made the mistake?
Yes, that is where I made the mistake.
Perfect. No problem. That's totally common. And so you just need to practice it until it becomes easy. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Can I ask you, Lebor, to put a link to the poll in the chat? I will answer some more questions, so you don't have to go away, but we do want to make sure we get a poll tonight. And so while I'm answering questions, if you could, those students who are feeling okay, if you could just fill in the poll. Okay, let's go to Goitsa Modomio. Can we unmute? Or maybe we're going to Bianca. Bianca, what's your question?
Hi, sir.
Hey.
Could you please mind explaining the method that you used to like find these factors, because I kind of got confused, and even the method that I use at school is also kind of confusing. So would you please mind explaining
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. I think you're definitely not the only one, because it's not like you get this method in like 20 minutes, right? You need to like practice it. Okay. So in the first part of the lesson, we always had ones in front. If there's a 1 in front of the x squared, it's super easy. The harder scenario is stuff like this, when you have a number in front that's not 1. So what I do is I look at the steps and I just go, look, I know I'm always going to have a cross here. And the easiest part is normally just to take care of that 2, and I write 2 and 1. The other part that's really easy normally is the number in front of the x. In this case, it's 1. And so I'm going to write plus 1 underneath a line down here. Now, the only choice I have left at this stage is I need to fill out these 2 blocks such that when I multiply along the crosses and I get my little sums, whatever they are, I get to plus 1. But what do I have for a choice in these blocks? The only choice I have is the number 6. So the number 6, I don't even worry about the minus in front. I just say the number 6. And this is where we do have some choice. So you have to play with combinations. So I'm going to choose 3 and 2, because 3 times 2 does give me 6. But I now need to get to plus 1. Now, if I choose the wrong pluses, if I choose a plus here and a plus here, well, then I'm going to get 4 and 3, and that gives me 7, which is not the plus 1 I wanted. But if I choose to make this a minus sign, 1 times minus 3 is minus 3. Notice how I'm multiplying along here. And 2 times plus 2 is plus 4. Well, minus 3 plus 4, when I add these up, I do get here. Now I've balanced things. The last step is to write things off horizontally. So I'm going to write off this bit, and I attach the variable to this side over here. So this
Are you still there, Mr. S?
the other multiplications that we do are built into that method. Okay. I'm going to pause there because we are going to continue in the next lesson.